Our next speaker will be Sampsa Kuha, the CEO and founder of Refined Reality, and he's going to talk about the lessons learned for developing for GearVR. Welcome, Sampsa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go straight to business. I won't present my company anymore here, and we're going to go straight to the presentation. And the topic is trial and error, lessons learned developing for GearVR. And I will go through my developing problems and issues and some solutions firsthand to get you some intel what to look out for when developing for GearVR. It's a tricky platform, but it's really rewarding at the same time. So I hope you get something out of this presentation. Actually, in this picture you can see some debugging horror. I was trying out animations and then I forgot some other components on. So there's this ghost coming straight through the wall there, and I actually scared myself. Yeah. So the topics will be the development environment, pretty short. Then some seriously stressing stuff about technical limitations. Then some challenges ahead that came onto me. So some challenges that I have to face, and some general developing stuff also. And then some case-specific approaches to some problems. Pretty general stuff. Level would be like intermediate, not professional. So you might get something out of this. So let's start with the development environment. So here's my hardware. I use a normal PC i7 processor, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I use the minimum specifications for using Oculus Development Kit 2 for developing. So I use a GTX 970 in my development environment. Well, that doesn't refer to this, but it helps run the game. So because I know it could be really frustrating running on. Well, actually, you can't even develop it nowadays with a laptop. Well, you can with the latest, but it's so expensive that it's just not wise. So, as I said, I still use Oculus DK2 HMD for developing on PC side, and then when I make builds, I use the GearVR Innovator Edition and my Samsung phone. And for the game, I debug the controls with a Mocha Pro controller and one cheaper iPECA Bluetooth controller. And I also tested it with the Kindle Fire controller. So I try to narrow it down so that it works with almost every Android controller. There might be some controllers that doesn't work, but these are the most used. And these are like in the normal price range. So, and actually the most expensive is the what is the name? Stratus XL. That's the most expensive. It's like 70 euros. So I actually don't have it, but that's like the 3 most used controllers. And then for the hardware, I also have this perception neuron mocap suite that I can record my own mocap animations. It's pretty neat tech. So it's really usable. And then for the development environment, for the software side, at the moment I'm still using Unity 5.3.6.1, but as soon as I get my offer from Unity, I'm gonna switch to 5.4, but I'm just waiting for an email. And then for 3D, I use Blender, 3D graphics, tweaking, I use GIMP. For mocap, I use Perception Neuron's own Axis Neuron Pro software. For audio, I use open source Audacity. And for the characters, I've used Autodesk's character generator because I don't have skills for rigging characters. So that was a really convenient way to getting characters with multiple blend shapes. And do facial animation and stuff like that with that. So it's a really neat tool. And then we'll go to the next phase called seriously stressed. Devices running GearVR have to output 60 frames per second, and that accounts for 2 times 1020 by 1020 textures. So you figure out that it's a lot of stress for the mobile CPU and GPU. So that gives some limitations for you. And Oculus has said that the draw goals are best kept under 100, and it's a fact. It has to be kept under 100, because if you don't do it, you'll run into problems for sure. And for textures, the pipeline works better than you have large textures than many. So using 4K textures is quite all right. Few of those run okay, but if you multiply like using 1024 textures a lot, that hinders your performance. And for the polycount, limitations are from, it depends what you're running on the side, but they start from 50K to 100K polygons per frame. So that's a pretty big limitation also. And the use of lights is really restricted. Use as less lights as possible. So baking light maps, it's not optional. You have to learn it. You'll face it in some phase anyway, so unless you're making something really simple. And also, no fancy shaders are allowed, so you can't use really not optimized shaders. You have to use mobile shaders. You get away with using Unity standard shader quite well. It's quite well optimized. And as said here, no wild instancing, so it's good to use pools if possible, and do the instancing in some part that there's no stress to CPU, GPU at the moment. So you really have to look out for it. And for my own targets, starting developing for this game, were I wanted to keep polycount fairly low so I could get the headroom for everything else and just keep safe, because I didn't know how the tech is going to evolve. It was a year ago, and we were still running with S6. I have no idea what S7 phone that runs GearVR will be, and there was also the older generation, Note 4, to take account. So actually, S6 was quite a good device to start with, because it was like the middle generation. Now I actually seen some baffle about people complaining that their S7 doesn't run well. Well, basically, if you want to publish a game on Samsung Store, which is like the primary marketplace for GearVR games, basically the only, then you basically have to run also on Note 4, S6, and S7 for this generation. So the ones developing with S7, they get a distorted view of the hardware, because there's like a liquid cooling system and more RAM and stuff like that. So it might distort the view what can be done. So I continue with this list. My aim for mesh polycounts was really low. I wanted to keep them really simple, so I could keep the headroom and do some cool stuff. And this through the whole process, it was a really good learning from all aspects, because you really have to learn how to do things simple and learn to do all the industry tricks to keep it running 60 FPS. And as said here, for the maximum detail in the meshes, it was like 1,500. So And that could be like one building complex. It's really low poly. During the development, I discovered that particle count should be for like combined or composed effects. It still has to be under 20 for part. Of course, you have to use mobile shaders in the meantime. And for the lights, I targeted one directional light because we're in space, so there's our solar system sun, that's basically the only light, and then reserve 2 point lights for lightning effects. And in practice, here you can see one mesh of the main vessel there. It's quite low, and you can see that it gets a bit denser on the inside. And in practice, these limits meant that things close by reserve more detail and texture space, and pack more polys, as I said. And all lights that can be baked are baked, and lighting effects are created on a shader with emission maps. So actually, that was really intriguing doing that stuff, because you could like use your creativity in the textures, creating these emission maps, and like think that hey, here there could be some light and illuminating this texture, and I'll make it this way. So there was a lot of learning involved, and by this you could making textures you could make fake forms in textures. So if the texture was far enough, you could add some shadows and some like stuff on the background of some pipes or something. So it's quite creative work, creating this shadowy contrast to get more detail when you don't have the mesh to put on real detail and real levels. Yeah, and continue with this topic. Using materials, you have to really think that you don't use too much different materials, and try to use shared materials, like for like the buildings. Try to use tiled textures if you need some big spaces. It's a thing with the fidelity that you see on a VR device. You can go so close to an object, so they have to be really high res. But even though you pump up the volume to 4K, it's not enough in most of the parts, like the floor. So it really needs to be a tiled texture. You can't map it and map there some nice detail. You have to tile it. Yeah, for the assets used in the scene, you have to. It's not optional. You have to use pooling systems to recycle your assets, like the plasma balls or missiles or anything, or the asteroids. And it's actually quite fun work to create these systems that you can replace stuff with stuff. And for the process, from the get-go, I was thinking that I have to constantly keep checking, making builds, that there's no CPU or GPU hogs on the way. One example is that there was a particle system that I hadn't scaled down, so it was running 1,000 particles, and it's the game previously that I hadn't made a tweak or updated some prefab in the scene. It was running really smooth, and then all of a sudden I was like, what the hell is happening? The whole game is freezing, and there was one particle emitting 1,000 particles. So that kind of stuff can ruin your game. So you have to be really like eyes open all the time. So this is how it looked in the start. This was the Big Bang, and it resulted something looking like this. Can you see it? Yeah. Yeah, now well. bit better. And this was the view out. Actually, you can't see it in the picture, but there's 2 sheets of glass there, so it's making. You can't use transparency because it uses too much. It causes too much overdraw, so it's an alpha texture. But there's 2 of those, so they create the volume of glass. But if you try it out later today or something, you can see it. But here you can see it. And the main target was that it looks decent and it runs 60 frames per second. But going any further, that introduced a lot of challenges. So it was challenges ahead. The game had a story. It was actually based on a demo I exhibited here last year. It was a demo for this tilting chair that you could fly a spaceship. And it has a scene where you protect the Earth from asteroids, of taking off from actually Helsinki up in the sky and protecting Earth. So this is actually a prequel for that. So this game tells a story what caused that asteroid storm for Earth. But for this, at this phase, for this game I'm here telling about here, it wasn't transmitting the story. It was frail and it was quite invisible. It was more of an arcade game that you do quick missions and then just go on. There was no depth to it at all. Visuals were quite okay, like on par with the target, but I knew that because I've managed to keep it in 60 frames per second, and I knew that software and hardware is going to go, the implementation from the vendors is going to go further. So I knew that there's going to be improvements, and that means visually it's possible to improve the visuals. And from the start, I ended up using the same system that I used last year for the demo here, but it was based on floating points, floating point space coordinates. So when you start to go over 20,000, nearing 100,000, you start to lose accuracy with numbers. So creating an infinite space, that's just not possible that way. But that's what I started this with. As I said, it really narrows the play area, and you can't do warps like infinite far, infinite fast. You get this wobble, and it didn't actually occur in the spacecraft, but it occurred in the character. Somehow the physics and the character bones reflected it much more. So it was there, but I couldn't account it at that phase, and I thought that I just don't have the skills to create another space coordinate system. And after this phase, some improvements were made. I remake the design of the ship, added some functionality, well, actually a lot of functionality. I created new intro, starting intro, create a lot of new systems on top of the old ones, and replaced some of those in the process, and start to add details. Well, that's actually an ongoing process. I'm still doing it, but it was a quite big bump at that phase. And for the missions or the game that I had, it was four missions total. It would have ended like 12 missions with that body, but I discarded all but final mission, and I got it to working with the space limitations with the float point coordinate system, with some tweaks. And this is how the interior looked afterwards. Here you can see some of the interaction system. So there's basically gaze-activated buttons that you can activate. So you have to turn over and you can access some functionality in spacecraft. So it's like added buttons. You have the game controller and then you have some added buttons that add functionality. Basically it's unlimited, but it's only limited by the learning curve or the game mechanics, that it doesn't get screwed in a way that it's so complicated that you always mixed up choosing the wrong button or something like that. Here's from the other side, you can see the sky view and some of the details. And then I came to a point that flying around in these missions, it just got boring, and I wanted to give depth to the game. And actually, I noticed that there was competition coming, competition in the field. There was another game that had similar approach, not this technical and like not this gaze-activated stuff or anything, but anyway, similar game coming out, and it was just like that arcade game that I was creating beforehand. So it really strengthened my view that I have to go further. I have to search what are the real limitations of creating a full-depth game for GearVR. So why not? A great time to add animated 3D characters with facial expression and lip sync to interiors that are not yet crafted. And that poses a big set of challenges. But fortunately, I had done a lot of research with Autodesk character generator characters. I had a pipeline that I could use the mocap suit that I had acquired during the same year. And those had 40 facial blend shapes to use. So I also had a plugin to work with that. It was like plug and play. You just throw an audio file there and tweak some values, and you get animated speech and really high-res characters from Autodesk character generator. So it was a really good match for those parts. As said, I used the Perception Neuro mocap suit that I could use at home. It uses Wi-Fi to operate, so it's a really neat piece of tech. And it gives a lot of freedom to just try things out, because it doesn't cost you renting an animation studio and planning several weeks ahead. But of course, this poses a really big challenge to CPU, GPU side. So there was a significant frame drops for if you put too much characters and have them too high res, or so it was time to start testing out and trying to find the good combinations. So I had to go using in the distance, using lower poly models, basic LOD stuff basically, and using Unity's own compressing tools and scaling down textures in the texture material editor. And on that way, I could get good enough results, even there was multiple actors in the scene. But then when I started adding AI to them, then the real challenges actually started. So there was animated characters, and they had AI system and animations and AI running at the same time with high-res characters and all that kind of stuff. So and for the interiors, here you can see one design from the top. It's a modular design. You can see the pieces there. Each one can be activated, deactivated. So I have to script their actions to to put the segments on and off according to player movement. And of course, not to stress the system too much, every light has to be baked, and if you want to make a dark room, you have to think about the light maps and turn light maps on and stuff like that. So you have to go deep to the lighting side. Here's what it looks like in the inside. Here I'm using shared materials with pieces of, well, actually shared models and then shared materials between the models. So I could get away with it and have it looking like visually stunning. Actually, afterwards thinking, it could have been made with even greater texture atlases and maybe get even better results. But this is what's there now. And this is some inside view of the hangar that it starts. This is a like outside camera render. It's not the game view. Game view is always first person, so it's just visualization of the environments. There you can see emission mapping for the lights, and they are baked in, not real time. And here's a visual of the cockpit. There you can, in this picture you can't see the dials. Some later on there's some picture that you can, or not. I'm not sure if there's a picture, but anyway, the same dials you see in the earlier picture, little polished. And I actually go back to this picture again because I wanted to design it so that you can see really well every direction. So from the outside, the ship design looks really weird, but on the inside you get a lot of panoramic space you can see around. Like you have the weapon docking system beneath you, so you can operate the button on the left, and then you can see it below you, so you can attach to the vessel. So from the outside it looks crappy, but in the inside it feels really nice when you have control and you see what's happening. There could be some rear view cameras, but just using render textures, and the render texture would hinder the performance really badly. So that's not an option here. Or then use an approach that is used by the F-35 fighters, that you basically see through all of the plane. There's cameras attached and all of throughout the aircraft. So. But that would result in a game that you just basically float in space, and that wouldn't be too fun. And here's one picture from the tunnel system that you can fly in, and there you're actually using a point light to illuminate the scene. But it's created so that when you go inside, you of course cut down the only directional light. So basically, it's just only one light then again. It doesn't do anything bad for the performance. All right, then we can go to the case-specific approaches for some problems. One big thing with VR is that you always have to think about the player. He might get some unnatural feelings, and with moving the aircraft without any emulated movement, it can feel really awkward and straightforward in a way that you feel like you're tilting or falling down, like tilting and then falling. So I experimented with this emulated movement, adding some really not even easy to spot movement for the head sideways movement. So basically, when you're tilting with the gamepad, in the same time, your head is moving a bit more to the left, a bit more to the right. And same forward, when you go forward, your head goes a little forward, and you go backward, your head goes a little backward. And this is combined with the really smooth out controls. So using the x-axis, we know that it gives -1 and +2, +1 on the other side. So you can't use direct, or even dead zones or sensitivity won't help. You have to have some added system that it keeps adding the value to the other side, and then when you don't push left, then it balances you back to the middle. So this is what I came up with, and in the same time it gives you more presence, which is a VR term for having the wow factor involved, and also perspective on the near game surroundings. So you can see more of the spacecraft, and in some different angles. So it gives more depth. And then another approach for the carrier hangar, or like autopsy. It's only a one object with 2 submeshes, and the total polycount is like 1,500. It's really low res with all the parts and bells and whistles. Basically, it uses one 4K map diffuse with emission textures, then 2 2K textures for the door maps. And everything is, the whole scene actually, one scene consists of all the game scenes, and all the lights are baked together, and then in code they are put to the right positions afterward. Actually, baking light, because there's so big distances in the game. I'll come to it later. Then in the 4th or 5th example, the distances are so big, so you actually can't bake the light maps. You have to move them more near the origo 0 to get them baked properly. So there's that kind of stuff involved also. So this carrier hangar has these baked light maps, and if you haven't experimented with light maps, you can also probably do even more freakier stuff. But I use it for this effect that you put on the light map and put off the light map, so you get this blinking dark effect when you couldn't have real-time lights doing that stuff. Because it's basically a texture. And then for the next system, it was the modular corridor system that I speaked before. As said, it was made of a web of modular components that are activated, deactivated to boost performance. I had to discover what are the good. I thought it would run because the spaces should just occlude and Unity do the work for me, but it wasn't the case. So I had to, or I just don't have the skills to use the occlusion system. But anyway, I wanted to be sure that it worked as I wanted. So I made this activation system to get everything out of the way when needed and on place when needed. And for the lighting part, all the segments are light mapped, and there's a lot of reflection probes giving more feel to it. And it's actually using normal maps. It's not, in many places it's said that you don't need to use normal maps in GearVR. It's just waste of resources. But I think it worked pretty well. Just using a lot of them to get some dynamics there when you can't have these expensive lighting effects. And yeah, and also used some. I didn't have the Unity Mobile Pro license, so I had to come up with a system to get these light probes, because when the character is moving, the lightning seems like static. There's no difference to the hand or anything. So I use this indie approach that it keeps setting some lightning value, and I get some dynamic to the scene. And for the, as I earlier mentioned, materials for this system were shared, and even some spacious feel created to one interior you can't go into. It was like narrowed down in the texture, so you think that it's longer than it is. Then for the other interior, it's this research base. You can see here. I also went with the oversimplified design and kept it under 2,000 polygons total. And it was a wise decision to split it to 2 sections also, to enable some parts easier, like the trees that trees and other props and stuff like that. And for the trees, I was discovering use of Atlas textures and created actually this texture that gathers all the covers all the trees. So using this texture and creating a plane with 4 segments, and then just copy pasting all around those parts and then adding the scene, and this results in one draw goal. So it's a really neat system. But if you're familiar with Atlas textures, this is not a new trick. But for me, it was. And I'm planning to use it a lot when I keep doing things for mobile. And the base has baked GI, baked global illumination, just like the other construction, and light maps. And then for the last part, I'm going to go over the gaze activation system again. Yeah, here's the picture. Actually, I was not sure if it was here, but here it is. But only the big buttons there are usable. All the other is like eye candy, because they have to be have to be aimed at. So you basically can't aim at little bells and whistles. So by this way, I could add more controls to the interface inside the spacecraft and add some movement to the game and depth. Also experiment having a like tablet that you could take and move wherever you want, like a social hub. But it didn't work out in that phase, and I just discarded the idea afterwards. It like totally froze the game. Actually, in my new system, it could work, but I think I'm not going to do it because I have a lot of things to polish. And for the activation of the gaze activation points, I made a loop so that it's really fast. You just need to like briefly gaze at it to activate it. Because when you're flying and there's a fight going on, you don't want to spend time like turning and then waiting for it to activate. It's like this. Although it poses errors when you are moving really slowly, but I think it works better that way. And and as said here, it has color, sound, and animation cue. So So there's a visual and there's a sound. About the sightline, placing those buttons poses some things you have to think. You have to place them so that you don't accidentally like look to your left or right. So they have to be under sightline. And I placed them so because I wanted to get rid of all the menus that you could need to use during gameplay. So I made, as seen here, I put the invert y-axis and invert x-axis buttons on the back. So you don't actually go that far like this during gameplay. But you can switch them during the game, and you don't have to go to a pause menu to do that. And then the last part is the new relative world coordinate system that allows for infinite space. You're not bound by the float limitation. So you can go on and head as far as you want. Space won't run out. Although content would run out really fast. But there's a content system that I'm building, so there's going to be some things to do in the infinite space. And the speeds are not that fast that you could actually, in real life scenario, you could get anywhere, basically. You go that slow that it would take you months to go somewhere. So the vessel you're flying, actually, it's more of like attack spacecraft. So they use bigger carrier crafts to move them around with bigger and more sophisticated engine technology. So as said, basically it means the player is still, but the world moves around him. It sounds boring, but it works really well, and you don't notice it. But now you know. Now you know it. And the player is in complete charge of the rotation of the fixed objects. So you spin around, and the world spins around you. And as said, the world is infinite, and as long as there's content system to generate content in it. I'm gonna go to a video demonstrating it here. Yeah, there I had a dead end. So go back. And yeah, so basically as long as there's content, you can go infinite. Yeah. Oh. I forgot to show this. There's a piece where piece of demonstration of the demonstrating the Atlas texture for the trees. If you're an old gamer, you might remember those times where all trees were like that. But those days are back. It's just like placing even one decent tree there, it would completely wreck the game. So that was a really convenient way to do it. Because you need to have the free movement there. So for the summary, it's good to stay with polycount limits and be sure to use every trick you can to keep it low. And prefer using few large textures over a lot of small. And always use Atlas textures if possible. Learn to use the Unity profiler if you use Unity or any profiler. And do editor tests and enabling stuff and looking how it hits the performance. So you can always keep track what is causing frame drops or anything. For the experimentations, experiment, then revise, and then optimize. Always remember to optimize. Oh. Then you basically have, if you want to do decent content on GearVR, you have to master baked lightning and all lightning components to get the maximum quality with the least GPU stress. And with testing the hardware, you have to keep constantly making test builds to see that it runs on the device. It's tricky because even recently there has been some updates that have hindered the performance, so it's a tricky business. But making test builds, it helps you catch those loose ends and basically, yeah, you won't get any hair loss ripping out your hair. And as a sum up, aim high and never give up. You can always find some solution to your problem. And the game engines and hardware are constantly improving, so it's good times ahead of us. Thanks for listening. If there's any questions, please do ask.
So actually, we are running out of time. So if you want to ask questions from Sampsa, please talk with him afterwards. But one question, so how to test your game?
What?
How can we test your game?
You can come testing, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Just grab me by the sleeve and I'll give you a spin.
Perfect.
It's not finished, but actually all the missions are in place, but there's like this dialogue and stuff like that missing. But
Super. So thank you again.
Thanks.